We're going to look at four things: how the world is a tale of 70 nations versus 70 people. The parts that we skipped, it listed 70 nations. Later, we're going to see that there are 70 Hebrews. What is standing between God's will in the world, all the nations? What is standing between the 70 nations, which are going to become almost 14,000 people groups by the time we're done with today's message? What is standing between the 70 nations and God manifesting himself on earth? 70 souls. They're called Hebrews. Next week, we're going to look at who I call the father, the father of faith, who will become the first family of faith. We're going to look at Abraham. Anyway, the world's struggle is really a tale of two cities. There's the city of Babel, which is man's will for God, or man's will for themselves, because they said, I want to make a name for myself. But it's also Satan's city. Who inspired them to do these things? God said, disperse yourselves. Who whispered into their ears and said, nah, don't do that? The world is a tale of two cities. The other city is Jerusalem, the city of God. We're going to look at how Nimrod is the first negotiator of the New World Order. The Bible says he was the first. Why? Because there's many more that will come after him. Satan has one game, and it's to control religion with evil politics. Yeah, I call it the politics of religion, the politics of worship. We're going to look at that today. You know, the Tower of Babel was actually an astrological temple of worship. That was a corruption of God's plan for telling his story through the zodiac, through the stars. We're not talking about astrology. We're just going to look at what God created. Anyway, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the original zodiac tells the Bible story. Number 3, God divides the world into sovereign states to save it from dictators. God disbanded the UN at the Tower of Babel because he did not want ultimate earthly power consolidated into the hands of a few ruthless sinners. Because when ruthless sinners get that kind of power, millions, if not billions of people die. So we're going to look at, going forward, how Nimrod's legacy is being carried forward even in today. Satan only has one game. Number 4, what is our role in all this? In relation to all this information, what is God calling us to do? Who is he calling us to be? We're supposed to be in, but not of, the world. We're in, but not of the city of man. We're in, but not of Babel. We have to fulfill Christ's great commission by reminding people that God gives us second and third and fourth chances to get right with him. Anyway, let's unpack this. If you're going to use your notes and you want to do your fill-ins, that's the blue text that'll be coming up on this slide. Genesis chapter 10 is a tale of a multitude of 70 nations versus the 70 people representatives that we're going to look at in the book throughout the rest of the book of Genesis. God wants to manifest himself in the world. He chooses to do it through people. Next week, we're going to see him tap Abraham on the shoulder and say, hey, come with me. The Bible's struggle is a tale of two cities. You got Babylon and you have Jerusalem. Some interesting things about Jerusalem, I think, in chapter 10 in Revelation. We're not going to do that today. When we get to Sodom and Gomorrah, we'll go back to Revelation 10. I believe it is about Jerusalem. Maybe it's 11. Where the two God's two agents are lying dead in the streets. There's a 3 or 4 word phrase there that we need to pay attention to because it gives us a lot of clues as to what's going to happen to Jerusalem today. Anyway, God's mission is to reach the nation. Next slide. I'm sorry, did you get those fill-ins? I know some of those words are long. Takes you time to fill them in. So we can move forward. All right. In the Old Testament, Israel is to remain and stay a nation as an example to the other nations. Look at what 1 Kings 10, 8 through 9 says. The queen of Sheba, the queen of the south, comes to visit Solomon, and she says this after speaking with him for an extended period of time, and he answers all of her questions. She says, how happy your men and happy are your servants. Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and set you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. He has made you king, that you may execute justice and righteousness. You can unpack those words. It means you can live under God's law. God wanted to form Israel as a nation. He said, obey me, honor the Sabbaths, honor your Sabbath years, your 49th and your 50th Shemitah years. And if you do, I will bless you, and all the nations will see how wonderful it is to live under God's law. Now, we Christians have not replaced Israel. It's an interesting thing that God sort of has two entities on the face of the earth. He's got the Christian church, and he has the Israelites. And just because he has one, he does not neglect the other. God can walk and chew gum at the same time. In the Old Testament, God wanted Israel to stay in the land and remain a nation. He brought them back in 1948. As an example, there's only one constitutional republic in the Middle East. It's called the Nation of Israel. America is not a democracy. Democracy is mob rule. If the mob decides, you see on TV, they're trying to convince us that we are a democracy. And that's why you see all these crazy Antifa people and these Black Lives Matter people on television all the time telling us wrong stuff. Well, the poll says. The poll does not change what the Bible says. Our challenge is to understand that 1 plus God will make a majority. God's looking for someone who will make a stand. It's not mob rule. The mob can vote and do anything it wants to do try to do against God's will, which we're going to see how Nimrod was the first person to try that. Now, the Lord is letting the world go on and get away with it for a while, but judgment is coming. Anyway, Jesus says in Matthew 12:42 that the queen of the south, he also repeats it in Luke 11:31, that the queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, something greater than Solomon is here. Who's the greater? God. Jesus Christ. Amen. What is our goal? What is our call? Our call now is to go. The church's call, Israel's call was to stay. The church's call was to go. And just because God tells one to do one and tells the other to do the other doesn't mean he's neglecting either of them. Remember, God can walk. God's both an and. He does this and this. He does both. All right. Now, Nimrod, next slide, whose name means rebel, was the first in a long line to come of mighty men who are inspired by Satan to hunt for the souls of other men. Notice in your Bible, there's quotes around this phrase, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. God is not saying that. God is not honoring Nimrod and calling him a mighty hunter before the Lord. That's what people are calling Nimrod. Or I should say, that's what Nimrod forced people to call him. The word before is like, I'm in your face. God, you told us to disperse, and I'm not doing that. I am in your face. That's what that means. It's a defiant thing. It's defiantly in the face of God. If he was such a godly guy, God would not have kicked his plan apart at Babel. Nimrod bombed out at Babel. You got those fill-ins? I see heads are still down. We'll wait a moment. In the history of the world, evil people have always tried to control everything. They want to control a nation's finances. That means if you don't do what I want you to do, you're not going to be able to work and earn a living or feed yourself. Evil people want to control religion. That's what Adam Weishaupt said. If we control the nation's finances, we then can buy up all the communications. Once we have the communications, we can make anybody the leader that we want. Once we have the politics, then we can get education. Once we get education, we will control the religion. Here's the world's first dictator right here. If his gig was that good, God would not have dispersed it. Next slide. Now, how did Nimrod do this? It says the beginning of his kingdom, as if it hasn't really ended. You ever hear of the Babylonian mystery religion in Scripture? The beginning of his kingdom, his realm, the Bible literally unpacking that word kingdom, it literally means his realm, non-Israel. He's not God's people. He's something else. You know what the word Babel means? Bab means gate or gateway, and El means God. You know, I'm a big comic book fan when I was a kid, and I used to read the Superman comic books, and Superman's name is Kal-El, son of El. Kind of a blasphemous statement when you think about it, but he's Superman. It's just a mythology. I suspended my theology just to enjoy the comic book. I don't do that very often. Spider-Man, no, I'm just kidding. I'm a Marvel guy. All right, so the word Babel means gateway to God. What was Nimrod really after? Remember, he said, I'm going to build a tower to the top of the heavens. Isn't that what Satan said? I will raise my throne above the throne of God. See, Satan only has one game. The root always determines the fruit. If you see somebody doing a bad thing, you can guarantee they had a bad thought. And if they had a bunch of bad thoughts, you can guarantee that they're locked into a bad philosophy that's probably anti-10 Commandments, anti-Sermon on the Mount, anti-Beatitudes. There's only two value systems in the world. There's the 10 Commandments and there's everything else. There's no in between. A young man who works for a legislature, state legislature, he said to me, I get it, Mr. Wallace. He went to one of my biblical basis of Bill of Rights presentations, and he says, I get it. I got to try to get my legislature to figure out which of the least of the 10 Commandments we can violate with each piece of legislation. And I said, well, if you break the 10 Commandments, are you sinning? He said, yes. I said, well, which one of them can you sin the less with? And he said, you're telling me that I can't break any of them? I'm like, well, why did God give them? He didn't give them for you to break them. He goes, wow, we have a lot of work to do, don't we? Nimrod was a no-go, next slide, at the Tower of Babel. He says we're going to make a name for ourselves. Whose name are we supposed to be glorifying? God's. But I'm going to make a name for myself. Well, how do you do that? Well, Nimrod's plan was let's step on other people. Was Nimrod... Let's do a little open book test here. Number one, I don't think these are in your notes, are they?
Nope.
No. So we're going to do an open book test here. I should have highlighted them in yellow so you would know they're not in your notes. This phrase, let us make a name for ourselves lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth, indicates one, Nimrod was creating a sacred space in which to meet God or to have his own name glorified. B, Nimrod wanted a city and a tower with its top to the heavens for A, to find God and worship him, or B, set himself up as God. B. Nimrod says, lest we be dispersed over the face of the earth, because he was A, defying God's command to multiply and fill the earth. B, he was going to obey God after he built his own kingdom. How many of us have done that, right? God, I'm just going to do this, then I'll obey you. Just bless me, Lord, as I go my own way. I always pray, Lord, you know I'm stubborn. I know that you raise your hand sometimes to bless me, and sometimes you raise your hand to discipline me, God. But please, I pray, do not let me go my own way. Do not let me knock your hand off my shoulder. Do not let me tell you to get out of my face. I need you, and I need you to work in my heart. I need you to discipline this rebellious child. Was it C? Was he building his own kingdom as his way of obeying God? My will for God, right? We would circle all the above probably, right? We really don't know about B or C, but we do know he was doing his own thing. So A is definitely where we could circle, but we might want to circle the other two. Hey, what about 4? God meets with man on man's terms or God's terms? It's always B, right? So we're B. I should have mixed those up a bit, made it tougher for you. Hey, check this next slide out. Nimrod wants to control politics. He really wants to control where he uses the politics to control the worship. He doesn't really want to control the politics. He really wants the worship. That's why he says, I'm building it to heaven. He sees God as his arch enemy. He could have gone and done his own thing and just left God out of it, but he chose not to do that. Why? Because he's an agent of Satan. The I wills of Satan in Isaiah chapter 14. He says, I will raise my throne above God. I will sit in the seat of the Most High. I tell people all the time, go be a pagan. But you start doing it in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, God will personally involve himself in your business. And he's not playing. You better go read Hebrews 6 and Hebrews 10. Go be a pagan. Leave Jesus out of it. Because God will personally involve, he will personally insinuate himself in your business, and it ain't going to be good. When you're a pagan, you're only putting yourself under Satan's domain. You're going to get what Satan has for you. You don't want to be messing around with God's judgment. Well, you're going to get it anyway if you keep messing with Satan, but I hope you understand what I'm saying here. Anyway, look at what the Bible says in Romans 1, 21 through 23. What happens when we step out of God's will and we begin to worship something else? We are making an exchange. There is some kind of transfer going on, and it is not healthy. It is not good. We need to avoid that at all costs. We need to say, God, you know what I'm like. I'm giving you permission to work in my heart and my life. Order the circumstances of my life so that I can serve you. Because left to my own devices is not going to be a good thing. In Revelation chapter 13, there are 2 beasts. Beast number 1 is the world divided up into one world government, 10 territories, 7 horns or rulers overseeing that territory. Now it's interesting in Revelation. Remember I told you in Genesis we see the beginning of the 70 versus the 70? Notice right here, the 7 heads with 10, you got 10 horns, 7 heads. You've got 10 territories overseen by 7 rulers. 7 times 10, or 10 times 7 is 70. You can't escape it. We are one of the 70 that has to stand against the multitude of the nations. And so, metaphorically speaking. Now, look at what happens in Revelation 13. There's 2 beasts. The second beast is a religious beast. It looks like a lamb. It has 2 horns. Tells you it's not a lamb. And it talks like a dragon. It's 2 branches of something that tries to position itself as Jesus, but it's really something else. How many people in Nimrod's kingdom were deceived by Nimrod? Do you know that it only takes 40 years for history to disappear? Hitler said it only takes 13, really. He says, give me a kid when he's 5. I'll send him to my schools. And by the time they're 18, 13 years later, they won't even know the history of their own country. They'll just know what we tell them. So you can imagine Judges 2:10, the Bible says, after the Israelites were led by a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day, after they had come through the Red Sea, after they had seen God destroy the firstborn of the mightiest nation on earth, that was after God demolished their economy with frogs and the greatest river on the planet turning to blood. Plants being ruined by hail. After the most powerful nation on earth's economy was ruined because the leader did not obey God, and the Israelites came through the Red Sea. One generation later, 40 years later, they wander in the wilderness, everybody dies. And they come, and Joshua 2:10 says, and there arose another generation that neither knew Joshua or Caleb, nor what the Lord had done for Israel. Whenever I hear a person, especially a Christian, especially a seminarian, especially a pastor, say separates the church and state, I am like, my goodness, Lord, we are that generation. We have a generation of Americans that neither know what you have done to our founding fathers of America. Now, if you were that God who had worked through the founding fathers of America, little ragtag group of people who fought a war against the most powerful nation on earth, and you actually, if you read what the founding fathers said, there were times when we were trying to move our cannons and our wagons, there was thunder and lightning so the enemy couldn't hear us move. The final battle of the war, the British figured out a way to attack. And when they brought their first wave of soldiers out, they said a gale force wind that had not been seen on the continent before then came and blew their barges out into the sea. The British generals and captains and majors, they hung their heads and they said, God himself is fighting for George Washington. If you were that God, and you have foolish people in America today saying, you never blessed this nation, what type of discipline would you get ready to tie to the behinds of people who say such things? Our churches are having absolutely no influence on the culture. We can I'm always perplexed by these churches. They cite separates the church and state, and then they go to the National Day of Prayer meeting so God can affect the state. I thought you just said he was separate from it. Get your story straight. Stop living in two worlds. Wake up. There's a whole world that's about to be slaughtered because of your foolishness, because you won't read history and you don't believe your own Bible. Anyway, two political beasts. So the religious beast, now what does the religious beast do? The only thing it does, if you read Revelation 13, is it gets the world to worship the political beast. We have separates the church and state, so we're not supposed to be influencing the government. The only thing that Satan does is he gets the religion to cooperate with the evil politics. It's worse than that. We teach from our pulpits that you should cooperate with the evil politics, despite what God shows us at the Tower of Babel. You know what else happened at Babel? Next slide. You know what the tower was? It was a ziggurat. Sounds like cigarette, doesn't it? You get a little far away from Christ, and all the coals are burning in the fire. You come over here and start doing your own thing. You start smoking because you're getting cold. There's no fire, so you smoke. Anyway, Nimrod's Tower of Babel was a pyramid that actually became a center for, or a style of worship for, the Babylonians and the Assyrians. And we saw what are the places where Nimrod built. He built Babylonia, which is Shinar. Shinar is another name for Babylonia. And he built Nineveh. Remember when Jonah comes to Nineveh? Well, Nineveh worshipped Dagon, the fish god. You know that Nimrod told the people of his time that his grandmother, Mrs. Noah, survived the flood because she was an antediluvian. She's a person that couldn't be drowned. She was a goddess. She was a half fish, half woman being. That's what he told them. And if you didn't believe me, he took you to the top of the tower and he threw you off. Josephus says Nimrod's goal was to dissuade men from worshiping God, which he would do either by coercion or by force. In the history of the world, evil people have never separated themselves from religion. They always try to control it. Shame on us for letting them do so, when we have a Bible that is so clear to understand. Our challenge is as we read our Bible through the paradigm of man's lies. 2008, somebody asked me to go do a talk somewhere. I was the director of a state agency, or at least an administrator of a program. And so they said, we want you to talk about sustainability. And I opened my Bible to see if I could find evidence of sustainability, and I couldn't really. Actually, sometimes God says, well, you're going to go in and destroy the land. Other times he says, preserve the trees. I'm like, well, what is it? I mean, what's this sustainability thing? So I went did the talk, but I didn't talk about sustainability. I said other people can talk about that. I couldn't find it in the Bible, so I was just neutral. I'm like, I didn't think it was bad. I just couldn't find it. But as time went on, and people kept asking me to come and speak about sustainability, and I'm examining the scripture, and I realized, wow, Genesis 1:28 through 31. It says man is supposed to have dominion, and God placed this seed. And Genesis 2:5 through 9. And then when Noah gets off the ark, I'm like, I don't see sustainability in the Bible. It wasn't in 2010 to 2012 that I realized that they're lying about the Bible. And ever since then, I'm sort of ballistic against sustainability, which is a lie about the creative goodness of God. We're supposed to be representing the Lord. Why are we letting these people lie about him? They're going to lie about God, then they're going to turn the food supply off. Most people are going to say, well, they told us the ecology was bad, and that's why we're starving. They're never going to realize the government's doing it to you. Much like what's happening in Venezuela. Anyway, so he's got a worship center going on. Let's move on. What did this worship do? Well, it corrupted the zodiac. It corrupted what the story God was trying to tell, and it marred people's view of it. It changed it to say, oh, this is not a story about God and the stars. There's something else going on here. Go to the next slide just for a moment. Oh, let me point this out. The word zodiac is a Greek word. It means zoe. It means the way or the path. You want to know the way of salvation? It's in the stars. A man in 1830s discovered this, a Harvard College professor, because Harvard used to be a Christian Bible-believing seminary. Those guys from the 1800s at Harvard and Yale, they were something else. So let's move on for just a moment. Let's go to the next slide. You don't have these in your notes. I'm just going to read these very quickly. You know, Virgo it shows us it's the seed of the woman, and she has two things in her hands. And what it's explaining is that this is the desire of the nations. It's a man of double nature. In humiliation exalted, he's a shepherd of the harvest. Libra, there's a price. The scales, there's a price to be paid, and you can't afford it. The cross has to be endured for the guilty to have their balance paid. Let's go to Scorpio. An archer. It's symbolizing conflict. There's serpent coils. It means there's a struggle going on. But the vanquisher is the guy with the arrow. He is the bow. He is going to destroy the evil one. Let's go to Sagittarius. Well, see, one of the challenges we have is you got the scorpion and the archer. They have two symbols together. Sometimes I break them up and make them. There's 9 zodiac signs. If you look at my chart, there's going to be 10. Sometimes 11. Anyway, so Sagittarius, you've got The double-natured one, triumphing as a warrior. He gladdens the heavens. He builds the fires of punishment. He casts down the dragon. You can look at these Bible verses over here, and you can. I'm going to give you these later. I just don't want to do it today because we got communion. I don't want to take a lot of time. So Pisces, next one, Pisces. Did I skip Pisces?
You skipped Capricorn.
Oh, Pisces is down here. Here's Capricorn. Look what it says about Capricorn. Part goat, part fish. What? Okay. Well, a goat, the ram, was in the thicket. It was the redeemer of Isaac. Jesus says, "I'm going to make you a fisher of men." It's pouring out water, living water, a continuous stream that the fish need to survive. Aquarius, there's the water right there, pouring out, and then the supply of water, which our fish, the Pisces, need to abide in the water. Abide in the water. Christ says, "Abide in me." Then there's Aries. Next one. Aries, a ram. There you go. That's the redemption, the redeemer of Isaac. Isaac was redeemed by the ram caught in the thicket. A lamb found worthy, the bride released and making ready. Satan bound. And you know what else rams do? They butt into things and they break down barriers to our salvation. All right, Taurus, the bull. This is the invincible ruler come, the sublime vanquisher of judgment. The bull oversees the herd. He's the great shepherd of the herd. All right, Gemini, twins. Why? The dual nature of Christ. He's God, he's man. He's lion, he's lamb. Cancer. Cancer is this the crab? All right, you're protected by the shell. There's a protective shell, but there's claws for defense. Don't attack his church. The possession secured, the lesser, the church of the firstborn. All right, let's go to Leo. Obvious, right? The Lion of Judah. I'm going to show you these. How, if you look at the symbols that God had people draw in relation to these zodiac signs, there's sometimes 3 or 4 different elements in the picture. And it's all about salvation. It's why people say, well, why are you spending so much time in the Old Testament? We're not under the law. I'm like, well, you're not under the ceremonial law, but you're still under the moral law. And you can't even really appreciate the moral law until you understand how much God has revealed in the ceremonial law about his son, Jesus Christ, who is our Redeemer. Amazing, isn't it? Just giving you a touch of it today. We're going to unpack it. The 12 tribes of Israel in there too. It's going to take me some time to pull those slides together, but they're there. When Israel was in the desert in Exodus, each tribe had a banner. The banner is connected to this stuff. I'm going to unpack that for you. Got to play around with some pictures, make it a little bit clear. All right, let's go back to we need a slide on dictators. Here he is. Here's Nimrod. I'm going to wrap this up here. In Genesis, God divides the world into sovereign states because he wants to save it from dictators. I'm not going to let one man control it all so he could turn it on and off with one switch. I'm going to give you all a fighting chance. I'm going to spread you out throughout the nations. This nation may fall to the wiles of the dictator, but these people over here, we're going to give you, you may survive. If you are wise, listen to God's word, understand what it's saying, and understand how to apply it to your civics, you can survive some of this. There it is, coercion of force. His goal was to persuade men not to worship God not. What's his legacy, though? We're dealing with his legacy today. Do you think that in Babel's civics, Nimrod wrote some rules for people to live by?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. All in favor of him, right? People say, well, we're just following the law. I'm like, well, Bill Clinton taught us that the law is the least form of morality, if it is even that. Let's take an open book test. Did you get your fill-ins? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's take an open book test. What type of law might Nimrod have written into the civics of Babel? Let's determine if the statements below would pertain to something Nimrod would codify, or is what America's founding fathers stated in the Declaration of Independence or in the Bill of Rights, and in the Bill of Rights. At the end of each statement, circle either FF for founding father or N for Nimrod. Who might have said our rights come from God? Founding fathers. In the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that we are endowed with certain inalienable rights from our Creator. What about our rights come from the leader? Government has the right to take your rights away. That's why I don't want government creating me as a special class citizen. I don't need a law that says you can't hit me because I'm black. I already got a law that says you can't hit me because I'm a child of God, I'm made in His image, I'm a human being. If I let government tell you can't hit me because I'm black, I'm giving government the opportunity to take my rights. I am wanting to live under God's purview, not theirs. I'm not falling for it. All right. What about D? Government cooperates with God to secure the rights He gives us. Founding fathers said that the Declaration of Independence literally says it is for this reason, to secure these rights, that governments are instituted by God. Government is supposed to be cooperating with God. All right, what about E? The Bible is given so we understand our rights. Do you think in Nimrod's kingdom he would have outlawed the Bible? Because it would have told you that God told you to disperse, and He's not doing that. Who would have probably written into their civics, church and state will be separate? Yeah. Nimrod. But was he separating religion from? No. He was only trying to control it. So they tell you to separate yourself, that there should be a separation only so you don't apply what God says to them. Somebody has stolen my country. I'm going to get it back, or I'm going to die trying. In the history of the world, evil people never separate themselves from religion. They always try to control it. All right, let's move forward. Where is Babylon, and what is Babylon? Revelation 17:1, Babylon is called the great prostitute who is seated on many waters. You know how when the Israelites were worshiping idols, God said you're committing spiritual fornication. You're whoring after idols. Here's the great prostitute right there. Selling us idol worship so we can consort with Satan. All right, number 2, she's destined for judgment in Revelation 17:1. Isaiah, did I spell it wrong? Isaiah 13-14 and Jeremiah 50 and 51 tell us that one day Babylon is going to be catastrophically destroyed like Sodom and Gomorrah was. Guess what? This has not happened yet. I say yet. It's coming. But first you have to rebuild Babylon, which Saddam Hussein started in 1988, I believe. And UNESCO, the United Nations Education Social Committee on something or other, is continuing to this day. It's a picture from 2015. People say, well, America must be Babylon. I'm like, well, it's not good that we're over there in a war, but we're not Babylon. Next slide. So, remember, the world is a struggle of two cities. One city is the bride of Christ, the other one is the mistress of Satan. Nimrod's legacy is to negotiate the world back into God's judgment. He won't tell you that. Those in his legacy, they won't tell you that. They'll just say, we're trying to bring good things to life. We want to make things fair for you. We're here to help. You know, there are a lot of bad people that are trying to hurt you in this world, and I'm going to take care of them for you. I will secure your rights. You know you don't have a right to sin, right? Right? We don't have a right to sin. You have free will to sin. If you had a right to sin, God would not send us to hell for sinning. You can exercise your free will, but you don't have a right to sin. You see our job, how we have to help the world to understand what's really going on from God's perspective? A lady was at church last week and she said, I had no idea the sustainability was bad. I said, well, why do you think it's bad? She goes, I just heard your message. I said, what did you think before? She goes, I figured if the government's telling us this, it's got to be okay. She goes, I never thought about it, but the moment you pointed out in Scripture, I'm like, wow, this is bad. Why are they telling us this lie? Anyway, I want you to check this out. Remember, in Revelation 13, there's one lamb, false lamb. It looks like a lamb. It's not a lamb. It's a lamb pretender. It's a pretender lamb. It's an imposter lamb. And it has 2 horns. There's 2 branches of it. Fatima is a village in western Portugal, small village even today, but in 1917 it became famous as a sighting for Mary. Said we saw Mary there. We even got statues of her there that cried real tears. Remember in Revelation that the Antichrist is going to make the statue come alive. He's going to animate the statue. There's already a religion that's got statues all over the world crying and bleeding, so they say, right? You know who else is Fatima? Fatima was the youngest daughter of Muhammad, the wife of the 4th Caliph Ali. She's renowned by the Shiite Muslims as the mother of these 2 famous imams, Hassan and Hussein. Fatima. One thing, 2 branches.